And it took the whole day until nightfall for them to all of a sudden realize, where's Jesus? And so now they have to go back to Jerusalem, and they spend 3 days looking for 12-year-old man-child Jesus. 3 days. Do you know how frightening that is when you think a kid's missing? When I was growing up, there was many things I was scared of. The rapture was one of them. All right? But kidnapping as a kid, there was someone in my family who got kidnapped. And it was a very frightening thing. My mother and my father, don't. Halloween was frightening not because of ghouls and ghosts. Halloween was frightening because it was the day that, grown folks were giving out candy. And that was the big sign. Don't take candy from an adult. Don't talk to strangers. So Halloween was frightening because it was like there's literally all these adults and strangers handing out candy. That's what made it frightening, kidnapping, right? The idea that you lost your child, that your child is gone, that you can't find your child, it is frightening. You know how scary that is. If you lose your child for an hour, your heart is racing, pounding. For 3 days, Mary and Joseph had their heart pounding. And if you're married and some angel showed up to you and said, this is going to be a special child, do you really want to face God at the end of it and saying, I left Jesus behind? Do you want that on your soul? No, you don't want that on your soul. You have one responsibility: keep this kid alive until he does what he has to do. And you, on the other hand, left him behind. How frightening. But it's a serious thing. The idea that you left someone behind in that physical way. And they go back. And finally they find him in the temple. And he is with an older generation, talking to the priests and the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. And it says clearly that he was listening and asking questions. And this is powerful. They, as an older generation, were open to him asking questions. And he was respectful enough that he listened. And so there was this opportunity where they were impressed that such a young man showed an interest, but they were also impressed with the questions. He was asking some legitimate questions, and they, I don't want to say entertained, but they were open to that. And they were sharing, and they were communicating. And that was a significant moment in Jesus' life, where an adult group was open to him asking questions. And they saw that he was listening. And that is huge. But then Jesus' parents come, and they finally find him. And Mary asks a very real question. Why in the world did you do this to us? Why did you treat us this way? And Jesus says something that I don't think none of your kids could get away with if he says it. He says, why are you asking me, about my business? Don't you know I'm supposed to be in my Father's house? He was it wasn't that he was rude, but it was a very odd response. Why are you worried about me being left behind? I'm grown now. I'm supposed to be about my Father's business, right? Now, I know that this is Jesus, but I need you to really imagine being Joseph, and here in Father's house. I'm supposed to be taking care of you. The family dynamic there is really strong. But at one of them, finally, they didn't understand what he meant by Father's house at the moment. But after they said, and not reprimanded him, but after they talked to him, it says he was obedient to them. And he grew in stature. And Mary treasured in her heart this whole experience with Jesus and the teachers of the law. He got left behind because the two groups assumed he fell in one of the camps. Because the two groups didn't check up on each other. He got left behind. And they found him at church. And in finding him at church, they realized that he is now grown. He's now asking questions, but he still needs their love and support until he finally is at the ripe age of 30 and he begins his full ministry. But the powerful thing about this is when we all hit moments where we know people or are the people who are at transitional points in our lives. And when you are at transitional points in your life, whatever age you are, that is when you most need the generations to come together, to talk, to try to understand each other, and to try to gain understanding, to try to gain mutual respect, to try to help you out. If you think that somebody turned of age and now they're on their own and you don't try to communicate, you lose and you might leave someone behind. Now this is not just for 21-year-olds or adolescents. It happens for folks who also are older. Technology changes and there is no stopping it. All right? We no longer use cassette tapes, right? We use what? CDs. We no longer use CDs. We use what? iPads or whatever, right? Soon we're no longer going to be using that. We're going to be using other things. Now, if you love your tapes, if you have your tapes, my grandmother, my dad's mom, she has this beautiful collection of tapes. What am I supposed to do with this woman's tapes, right? All these tapes. And it's breaking my heart, but I'm like, there's nothing more to do with any more of these tapes, right? It's CDs. But you cannot stop time. You cannot stop social change of technology. You can't stop it. And you, as an older person, may feel, I'm going to get left behind if no one talks to me about this stuff. If no one reaches out to me to try to help me understand the new technology or at least sit with me to help me use it, I will get left behind. So it's not just teenagers who get left behind when generations don't talk. Sometimes when generations don't talk, older folks feel like they're going to be left behind as well. No one wants in our society to be like, there's supposedly, the Eskimos supposedly have this reputation. I don't know if it's true or not, where at a certain point on their travels with each other, they leave behind their old folks to pass away. Because the old folks are a bit of a burden on them. I don't know if it's true. This was in philosophy class in my ethics book, right? So if there's someone who's of Eskimo heritage and I offended you, yell at me after the service. I will gladly correct you. All right? But I heard that this was, and maybe not today, but back in the day, I heard that this was the case. That at one point, it's not just young people who get left behind, it's also older folks who get left behind as well. If the generations don't talk, you run the risk of leaving people behind. And when the generations talk, you run the risk of not leaving anybody behind, but having a unity through understanding and through respect that matters. And when that happens, you can come together and move on. And you can come together as a group and make a difference. But transitional times, we all are changing. And one of the reasons it's important for generations to talk is because everybody goes through changes. And sometimes you need to know how the older generation dealt with their changes in order for me to know how I can deal with my changes. And sometimes the older generation needs to talk to the younger generation about the changes that are happening, that they don't understand why they're happening, so that they can also deal with those changes as well. You cannot stop change. And if you don't deal with the fact that things change, you don't realize that God is the God who is with us through all changes and through all changing seasons. So when you communicate with each other, when you run the risk of no longer trying to disagree with each other and look on suspicion, but actually getting real conversations with each other, you actually open yourselves up to experience God's presence and grace in your life as the one who is with you through the changes. You gotta talk. It's hard. Sometimes young folks feel like, sometimes the older generation feels like they are not respected because they are not understood. Young folks don't understand the choices you got to make when you have dependents. Young folks don't understand the choices you got to make when you have to make compromises. Sometimes young people feel like they are not understood because they are not respected. So if you say a problem, oh, this girl broke my heart, when you're 40 years old and you're trying to pay bills and take care of the kids and you're trying to get this and this, someone breaking your heart is You know, you got to move on and deal with it. You got other problems. Like, I know it hurts, baby, but you got to go work. Right? But if you don't respect that, you understand what it is to have your heart broken. You understand what it is to be rejected. You've gone through it probably 8 times since then. But sometimes you don't respect the fact that though you know it hurts, you don't know how badly it may hurt them for the first time. So you don't listen. You'll be all right. You'll get over it. It's true. They will be all right. They will get over it. But listening to them going through it is important, because when it's the first time you get your heart broken, you really do feel like the world is going to